Hello everyone, my name is Abby Latovsky and I'm one of the aftercare coordinators with Legacy of Hope. I am joined today with Karen Weinrib. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit about you?
Sure. Thank you for asking me, Abby. My name is Karen Tishler Weinrib. I'm a 50-year-old heart transplant recipient, and I had my heart transplant almost 29 years ago.
So the first question is, will you share your transplant story with us?
Well, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you again for asking. It will be 29 on December 9th of this year. So to tell you a bit about my heart history, I was born healthy, and then when I was 3 days old, I got myocarditis, which is a virus, an infection that gave me a murmur and an enlarged left heart. I was very sick as an infant. I obviously don't remember any of that, but I was fine growing up, just saw the pediatric cardiologist once a year or so, and then eventually that even stopped. Well, go to high school now, and during high school I began to get arrhythmias, which are funky heartbeats for those who don't know. And I didn't want to tell my parents because I was in marching band and I thought they would say I couldn't do it, but eventually, these things have a way of coming out. I began to see an adult cardiologist at UAB. And he, evaluated me and eventually put me on 2 medicines. So I went off to college with my 2 medicines with the admonition that I could do everything except the strenuous gyms. And truly, I just acted like a regular college student. So I'd stay up to 2 in the morning studying, get up early to study more, go to class. But then after my sophomore year, I went to see Dr. Epstein at UAB for my annual exam. And he told me that my heart was gradually getting worse. He said that I would probably die before old age. I probably would not live to see 30. I could not have children because the physical strain of pregnancy would kill me, and that I might need a heart transplant one day. And honestly, the part about the heart transplant went in one ear and out the other. This was about 1990 or so, and the thought of a heart transplant still sounded like science fiction. I noticed that I was getting very, very out of breath while walking around campus. But I thought, oh, Emory's very hilly, and you're overweight, you're out of shape, etc. We never attributed to what it really is. And that Thanksgiving, I went up to Canada with some of my family, both to visit relatives and also to look at graduate schools. And I felt lousy the entire time I was there. I felt nauseous and I couldn't breathe lying down flat. Well, finally, I was at my aunt's house for brunch right before we were supposed to go back home, go over to the airport. And I turned to my brother, Stephen, who was a medical resident at the time, and said, by the way, I can't breathe. I ended up being whisked away in an ambulance, and it turns out I was in heart failure. Heart failure doesn't mean that my heart stopped. It never stopped beating. But it meant that my lungs were slowly filling with fluid because my heart was beating so weakly. It was as if I was drowning internally. And the test revealed that my heart was 3 times too big. If you looked at the x-ray, my heart went from chest wall to chest wall. It was end-stage heart failure. So Dr. Epstein told me it is end-stage heart failure and your only option is to be evaluated for a heart transplant. Now, my family didn't leave my side, except that Saturday night, they all decided to go somewhere across the street for dinner. Naturally, Murphy's Law, that's when the entire transplant team came in to tell me that they were putting me on the heart transplant list. So I turned to my new cardiologist, Dr. Robert Borish, UAB, and I said, how long can I live with my own heart? And he said, Karen, you can live 20 years or you can die tonight. And I was 21 years old, a college student, and hearing this. To somewhat shorten the story, I went into UAB on a Tuesday. I got on the list a Saturday night, and I got the heart on a Monday.
One of my questions for you was how Judaism played a role, if any, in your transplant journey. Do you mind sharing a little bit about, how Judaism has shaped your transplant journey at all?
Certainly. I would say it has had an impact, particularly on my post-transplant surgery life. I will say that when you are facing death like that, trust me, you do pray a lot. Because in the 1990s, again, everyone was convinced that Jews can't be donors. My rabbi always said we're not supposed to desecrate the body. So in Judaism, there's the highest teaching of all that you are supposed to save a life. And I'll share something I don't usually share in my heart talks, which is that after I was prepped for surgery and everyone left me alone for a minute, I actually went into the hospital bathroom in my room and I looked at my chest and I thanked my heart and I said goodbye to it. I was out of the hospital in 12 days, and I would wager that people get out even faster now. But soon after I got out, I had to get put back in. And they put in a Grosjean catheter, which is a catheter that goes straight from your heart to the outside world with two little prongs, so that I could give myself twice daily IVs. When I was released, I was taking 41 different pills and liquids a day. I almost died when I was 21, but thanks to the generosity of one family, I'm still here and able to torment my students for 7 years, torment my son sometimes. Certainly I can exercise now. Before surgery, I couldn't even sit up, but I couldn't lie down flat and breathe well. I certainly couldn't exercise. Things I can say I've done since my transplant. Since my transplant, I graduated on time with my class from memory. Thank you, AP credits from high school. I got a master's degree in history from the University of Minnesota, a master's degree in education from UAB. And I taught a subject I loved for 7 years in my alma mater. I taught history. And that's when you might remember I was a teacher at the school you used to go to. I then had a nonprofit career, did some freelance writing. Certainly I was alive to see all kinds of nieces and nephews be born. I had one who was with me in Canada when I was in heart failure. Since then, 7 more were born, acquired 3 more by marriage, and now almost all of them are in their 20s. Much to the delight of my mother, I finally got married when I was in my 30s. And then a few years after that, my husband and I adopted a son who actually just turned 13 yesterday. So I used to say in my talks that my favorite title was Auntie, but of course now it's Mom. I was UAB heart transplant patient number 266. I don't know how many they've done now. Thanks to HIPAA, I don't have an exact number, but I know it's over 1,000. But I was very lucky. When I started giving these talks in the mid-1990s, there were around 60,000 people on the national wait list, the UNOS list, United Network for Organ Sharing list. I looked it up today, mid-afternoon. As of right now, there are 108,677 people on the list for some kind of organ: kidney, liver, intestine, heart, lung, pancreas, etc. And unfortunately, I'm sure over 20-something of those people die a day. That's just statistically how it works. And I know there are a lot of myths. They're not going to save my life in the ER if they think that I'm an organ donor. Hardly. Doctors have to swear to the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm. They're separate doctors for the transplant and the patient care team. I believe they're still required to have 2 doctors to determine brain death. I mean, there's certainly lots of specific tests to go through. I think people think, oh, you have to be famous. David Crosby, Mickey Mantle, these people got organs really fast. Or Dick Cheney. No, I was a 21-year-old college student. So that is not true. And I know we want to talk more about the faith aspect of things. I'll say in the Jewish community, not as much now, but people definitely used to think there's a strong prohibition in Judaism against desecrating the body. I mean, we don't have open casket funerals or anything like that. In Judaism, the highest teaching of all is to save a life. One who causes the loss of even one life, it is as if that person caused the loss of an entire world. And one who saves one life, it is as if that person saved an entire world.